Netflix's Moxie, directed by Amy Poehler, is about a teen girl who discovers her mom's riot grrrl punk feminism from the 90s and introduces it to her school in 2021 in order to combat its sexism problem. Through her anonymous zine, she organizes the students in her school to campaign for the captain of the girls' soccer team to win the athletic scholarship that seems destined to go to the middling boys' football team, protest an unfair dress code, and push for a trans girl to be able to audition for the female lead in the school musical. All of which seem like they would be great episodes of a series, but might be too much for one movie to handle. What did you think?
Like a lot of movies we reviewed, it's not very good, but I wasn't really expecting it to be. That being said, I definitely know that teenager me would have actually really enjoyed this movie and learned a lot from it. And I feel like that has to count for something. I know a lot of current teens are a lot more politically savvy than I was a decade ago, but I still think it can do a lot of good for a lot of young people who aren't really familiar with these issues. Brandon, what's your take?
I don't know. I feel like a lot of its feminism was pretty outdated and stuck in the tactics that may have really resonated in the 90s, but aren't necessarily that good today. I wish it had gotten a little bit more into that. Like it did towards the end of the film when they were leveraging social media, like streaming the walkouts on Facebook Live and spreading the word to protest by dressing a certain way via Instagram, when just putting a few handfuls of magazines in the bathroom really might not cut it.
I agree, it's really using this 90s punk feminism as this surface level costume without getting into why it held power or how it subverted the dominant culture of the time. I mean, let's look at our main character, Vivian. She doesn't really experience the sexism that she's fighting in the same way that a lot of her classmates that aren't white or straight or cis or able-bodied do. It has to be pointed out to her, and even then she defends it at first.
If you keep your head down, I'll move on and bother somebody else.
Thanks for the advice. But I'm gonna keep my head up. Hi. See you in class.
All of this happens all the time in real life, and it's good to show it. I just wonder why we're focusing so much on her story when those around her are the ones that are directly affected.
I do appreciate that they still feature some of those other stories, even if they're not the main focus. Like take Lauren Tsai's character Claudia, for example. She struggles to get involved because she's the daughter of Chinese immigrants, and her margin to fuck up is just so much smaller than Vivian's. And I relate to that on many levels. And her redemption arc is really satisfying to see, where she can become involved and be vital to Moxie's success without necessarily being in the front lines. Also, I'm now 100% Team Nico Hiraga. No Centineo? Don't know him.
Oh, 100%. Getting back to your point about how this movie can inspire current students who are facing sexism in their own schools, though, I have to admit that the ending of this movie made me really uneasy. There's this scene where Vivian has this total meltdown about every stressor in her life, ending in this.
Why isn't Dad spending Christmas with me, Mom?
Which, fair. She shouldn't need to be perfect at all, but it kind of undermines the activism that she's doing and makes us, the audience, question her leadership role. Immediately after this, she goes into the school bathroom and finds this note from an anonymous student coming forward that she had been raped the previous year. This is so much heavier than anything they've dealt with up until this point, and there's 17 minutes left, 7 of which are credits, meaning that from the time this plot point is introduced, they have exactly 10 minutes to resolve it, tie up any other loose ends in the plot, like the central romance, and the friend suspension, and the general lack of accountability from the school, and have a celebratory dance party. And the resolution is, they come forward publicly, the principal takes it seriously, the movie gestures that the offending party is going to be punished, and everything works out fine. No sweat. And we're supposed to believe that this is the same principal who dismissed legitimate claims of sexual harassment because it would require a lot of paperwork, sent a girl home for wearing a tank top, suspended another girl because her friends vandalized the school by putting stickers on lockers, and just awarded the rapist $10,000 and designated him the school's representative on a statewide level. She comes into work one day and finds her stolen awards smashed and red paint all over the school's threshold, and we have to buy that she would just ignore all of that and do the right thing? In the real world, this is when all of the levers are pulled to protect powerful abusers and delegitimize victims. If this is the message that we're putting out to beginner feminists, we're setting them up to fail and potentially putting them in really dangerous situations when this stuff matters the most. I don't know, either this should have been what the whole movie was about, or just removed entirely to focus on the small wins.
I totally hear you, but doesn't it feel weird that the three of us are debating feminism like this? Like, we're really just three dudes. Maybe we don't have the best perspective.
Yeah, you could probably use another voice on this one.
Jesus, where did you come from? I mean, hey, Christina, happy to have you. Where are you at on Moxie?
I think it's a mixed bag, really. I think the filmmakers had really good intentions, but tried to do a lot of heavy lifting in 2 hours. I'm not really sure who the audience is for this, but at the end of it, I'm almost willing to bet it was for an audience who only know wokeness based off of watching their nightly newscasts in the last 4 years. You know, not only does this film feel like it's over a decade off, but the tone is off, it loses focus at the end. Like, is it a feel-good comedy? Is it, why does it dip unnecessarily dark at the end? Why does it not develop that storyline? And why does it leave us hanging? But ultimately, it follows a really common formula of female-centric coming-of-age films where, like, the sheltered girl gets her life shaken up by this newcomer who comes into town and just shakes up the status quo. The film has, like, this overt acknowledgement of the failures of white feminism and of the past, but it still manages to fail on, like, intersectionality and inflict damage on the reputation of rebel girls. Unfortunately, it, like, props up a white girl whose contributions to feminism were solely motivated by the women of color in her life. And she steamrolls them along the way. Like, this white girl doesn't really have issues of her own, but somehow centers the focus onto her. I don't know if this film is going to be helpful to modern teens who I would seem that already have, like, a modern way ahead of this movie, but and maybe it serves as an introduction for people who don't have that access point into the real issues that are happening not only in high school, but in everyday life. So if you find that, I guess, you don't have that access to real life issues, then maybe check it out, I guess.